All right, let's move. Yes, sir.
December 22nd, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, acting commander of the 101st Airborne Division, receives a situation report from his operations officer. The division is surrounded. Ammunition stocks are calculated to last 3 more days under current consumption rates. Medical supplies are critically low. The weather has prevented air resupply for 48 hours. Third Army is reported to be moving north, but its exact position, its arrival time, and the roads between here and there are controlled by German armor. McAuliffe listens to the report and asks a question that cannot be, what do we do if they don't get here in time? That question initiates a series of planning sessions that will continue for the next 4 days. The sessions are not recorded in detail, but their outputs survive in fragmentary orders, staff officer recollections, and post-battle reconstructions. What emerges is a portrait of a military command preparing for the possibility that relief will not arrive. That the siege will continue past the point of sustainable defense, and that decisions will have to be made that no commander wants to make. This is the story of those preparations. Not the story of heroic resistance or dramatic rescue, but the story of Plan B, what the 101st Airborne was ordered to do if Patton failed. December 22, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, acting commander of the 101st Airborne Division, receives a situation report from his operations officer. The division is surrounded. Ammunition stocks are calculated to last 3 more days under current consumption rates. Medical supplies are critically low. The weather has prevented air resupply for 48 hours. Third Army is reported to be moving north, but its exact position is unknown. Its arrival time uncertain, and the roads between here and there are controlled by German armor. McAuliffe listens to the report.
Eyes forward, keep the pace. Stay in formation, move. No stragglers, push through.
And asks a question that cannot be, what do we do if they don't get here in time? That question initiates a series of planning sessions that will continue for the next 4 days. The sessions are not recorded in detail, but their outputs survive in fragmentary orders, staff officer recollections, and post-battle reconstructions. What emerges is a portrait of a military command preparing for the possibility that relief will not arrive, that the siege will continue past the point of sustainable defense, and that decisions will have to be made that no commander wants to make. This is the story of those preparations, not the story of heroic resistance or dramatic rescue, but the story of Plan B, what the 101st Airborne was ordered to do if Patton failed. Chapter 1. Calculating the December 22nd afternoon. McAuliffe's staff gathers for what they internally refer to as the sustainability assessment. The purpose is clinical. Determine how long the division can maintain defensive operations under current conditions and resource availability. The assessment begins with ammunition. The artillery officer reports that 105 mm howitzer ammunition is being consumed at approximately 1,200 rounds per day. Current stocks, 4,800 rounds. At current rates, artillery support will cease in 4 days. The situation for small arms ammunition is better but not sustainable. Rifle and machine gun ammunition will last approximately 8 days at current consumption, but consumption rates are not static. If German attacks intensify, ammunition expenditure will increase proportionally. The artillery officer presents his worst-case calculation. If German forces launch a coordinated assault involving multiple regiments, artillery ammunition could be exhausted in 48 hours. The medical officer presents casualty figures and capacity. The division has sustained approximately 400 casualties since December 20th. Medical facilities in Bastogne can handle current casualty flow, but only because weather has prevented German artillery from sustained bombardment. If weather clears and German forces can employ their full artillery capability, casualty rates will increase by estimated factor of 3. Medical supplies, plasma, morphine, surgical materials, are already insufficient for current needs. The division surgeon estimates that without resupply, medical treatment will transition from surgical intervention to basic wound care within 72 hours. The logistics officer addresses food and fuel. Food stocks are adequate for 2 weeks, possibly longer if rationing is implemented. Fuel for vehicles is more critical. Current stocks will sustain defensive operations for 5 days. After that, vehicles will be immobilized, which means artillery cannot be repositioned, wounded cannot be evacuated by ambulance, and command mobility will be reduced to foot and bicycle. The logistics officer notes that fuel consumption can be reduced by limiting vehicle movement, but this creates tactical rigidity that the Germans can exploit. McAuliffe listens to these assessments and requests a consolidated timeline. The operations officer presents it in stark terms. Under current conditions with no resupply, the division can maintain effective defensive operations for approximately 5 days. After that, ammunition shortages will degrade combat effectiveness, medical capacity will be overwhelmed, and mobility will be severely restricted. The division will not collapse on day 6, but it will no longer be able to conduct the kind of active, mobile defense that has characterized operations thus far. The question then becomes, what happens after day 5? The staff discussion that follows is reconstructed from multiple post-war accounts. The consensus is that the division faces 3 options if relief does not arrive within 5 days. First, continue defending in place with degraded capability, accepting higher casualties and eventual ammunition exhaustion. Second, attempt a breakout to the west or south, abandoning wounded who cannot be moved and accepting losses during movement through German-controlled territory. Third, negotiate surrender to prevent further casualties. No formal decision is made on December 22nd, but McAuliffe directs his staff to develop detailed plans for options 1 and 2. Option 3, he makes clear, will only be considered if options 1 and 2 become impossible. December 23rd, the operations officer, Lieutenant Colonel H.W.O. Kinnard, begins developing what will be referred to internally as Plan Exodus. The concept is straightforward. If the division's position becomes untenable and relief has not arrived, select units will attempt to break through German encirclement and fight their way to American lines. The plan is not for the entire division. It cannot be. A breakout operation in winter at night through enemy-controlled territory with limited ammunition and fuel cannot succeed with 10,000 men. It can only succeed with a fraction of that number. The first decision is which units participate. Kinnard's analysis concludes that a breakout force must be mobile, lightly equipped, and capable of sustained movement under combat conditions. This means infantry, not artillery. It means able-bodied soldiers, not wounded. It means abandoning heavy equipment, vehicles, and anyone who cannot march 20 miles in winter conditions. The plan designates 2 infantry regiments as the breakout force. The 3rd Regiment, along with artillery and support units, will remain in Bastogne to cover the withdrawal and, if necessary, surrender once the breakout force is clear. The second decision is timing and route. Breakout operations exceed through surprise and speed. The plan specifies a night departure, moving south toward known Third Army position. Intelligence estimates place Third Army approximately 15 miles south of Bastogne, but this is based on fragmentary reports and may be inaccurate. The breakout force will move cross-country, avoiding roads, navigating by compass. Estimated movement rate, 2 miles per hour in darkness over winter terrain. If everything goes perfectly, the breakout force might reach Third Army lines in 8 to 10 hours. If they encounter German forces, movement will slow or stop entirely. The third decision is what to take and what to leave. Each soldier in the breakout force will carry personal weapon, ammunition, 1 day's rations, and nothing else. No packs, no sleeping bags, no spare clothing. The objective is speed and endurance. Wounded who cannot walk will be left behind with medical staff. Artillery pieces will be destroyed to prevent capture. Vehicles will be drained of fuel and disabled. The breakout force will leave Bastogne as light infantry and hope to survive the march. Kinnard presents the plan to McAuliffe on the evening of December 23rd. McAuliffe reads it carefully and asks about casualties. Kinnard's estimate is conservative but grim, 30 to 50% losses during the breakout itself, higher if German forces detect the movement early. McAuliffe asks about the men left behind. Kinnard's answer is direct. They will surrender once the breakout force is clear. There is no other option. They cannot march. They cannot fight without ammunition, and leaving them to die serves no purpose. McAuliffe does not approve the plan on December 23rd. He orders it refined and updated daily, but implementation authorization is withheld. The plan exists as contingency, ready to execute if circumstances require it. But the decision to execute, the decision to abandon half the division and accept massive casualties in a desperate gamble for survival, is one McAuliffe hopes he will never have to make. December 23rd through December 25th, while staff officers refine breakout plans and calculate ammunition consumption. The medical staff faces a different kind of planning, crisis. The division has over 600 wounded by December 23rd. That number increases daily. Medical facilities in Bastogne are improvised. A church basement, a schoolhouse, several cellars. Surgical capability is limited. Medical supplies are critically short. And the fundamental medical reality is inescapable. If relief does not arrive, there is no way to evacuate. The division surgeon, Major Douglas Davidson, conducts an assessment that he later describes as the most difficult professional task of his career. He categorizes the wounded into 3 groups. Group 1, ambulatory wounded who can walk and potentially participate in a breakout, approximately 200 men. Group 2, seriously wounded who require hospitalization but might survive if evacuated, approximately 300. Group 3, critically wounded who will not survive movement and require constant medical care, approximately 100 men. The plan being developed by the operations staff assumes that only Group 1 wounded will be included in any breakout attempt. Groups 2 and 3 will be left behind. Davidson understands the military logic. A breakout operation cannot succeed while carrying litters, but he also understands the medical and moral implications. Group 2 wounded, men with broken legs, abdominal wounds, severe trauma, will be left in Bastogne with minimal medical supplies and staff. Group 3 wounded will be left to die or survive on basic care provided by medical personnel who remain behind. Davidson raises this issue with McAuliffe on December 24th. The conversation is not recorded, but multiple participants later describe its substance. Davidson argues that leaving wounded behind without adequate medical care violates medical ethics and possibly Geneva Convention obligations. McAuliffe responds that a breakout operation itself, a last resort measure taken when all other options have failed, if the choice is between attempting to save half the division or losing the entire division, the moral calculus, however terrible, favors the breakout. Davidson requests and receives authorization to develop a medical plan for the scenario where the division remains in Bastogne without resupply. The plan is essentially triage at scale. Medical staff will focus resources on wounded most likely to survive. Pain management will be prioritized over curative treatment when supplies are insufficient for both. Surgical interventions will be limited to life-saving procedures that can be performed with available materials. The plan does not use the word euthanasia, but it acknowledges that some wounded will receive palliative care only, which in conditions of extreme supply shortage means they will die with whatever comfort morphine supplies can provide. By December 25th, the medical staff has prepared for a scenario they desperately hope will not occur. The continuation of the siege past the point where medical care is possible. Supplies are organized by priority. Staff assignments are made. Procedures are established for informing wounded of their status and, when appropriate, allowing them to write final letters. The preparations are made quietly, without announcement to the division at large. But the medical staff operating in the improvised hospital understands what the preparations mean. December 24th. McAuliffe receives updated intelligence about Third Army's position and progress. The reports are fragmentary and sometimes contradictory, but they suggest that Third Army is engaged with German forces south of Bastogne and making slower progress than hoped. Weather continues to prevent reliable air resupply. German attacks on Bastogne's perimeter continue. The timeline established on December 22nd, 5 days of sustainable operations, is now 3 days. McAuliffe convenes his regimental commanders and key staff officers. The meeting's purpose is to review contingency plans and establish decision criteria. At what point does the division implement Plan Exodus? What indicators will trigger the decision? Who makes the final authorization? The discussion is pragmatic and, by multiple accounts, remarkably calm given the stakes. The operations officer presents updated ammunition calculations. Current stocks will sustain defensive operations through December 27th under current consumption rates. If German attacks intensify, that timeline shortens to December 26th. The consensus is that ammunition status is the key indicator. When artillery ammunition falls below 200 rounds, enough for one major defensive engagement, the division will have reached the point where effective defense is no longer possible. The medical officer presents casualty projections. If current casualty rates continue, medical capacity will be overwhelmed by December 26th. The division can continue treating wounded beyond that point, but only at reduced capability. Surgical interventions will become rare. Wound infections will increase. Mortality rates among seriously wounded will rise sharply. The medical situation, like ammunition, has a calculable endpoint. McAuliffe asks each regimental commander for their assessment. The question is specific. Can your regiment execute a breakout operation if ordered? The responses are cautious but affirmative. The regiments can move, they can fight, but success depends on German dispositions, weather, and factors beyond the division's control. One commander notes that a breakout under current conditions is not a military operation in the conventional sense. It is survival move with combat capability. The distinction matters because it clarifies what success means. Getting some portion of the force to friendly lines, not defeating the German forces surrounding Bastogne. The meeting concludes with McAuliffe establishing decision criteria. The division will continue defending in place as long as ammunition stocks permit effective resistance. And third, Army's arrival remains plausible. If ammunition falls below critical threshold and no indication of imminent relief exists, McAuliffe will authorize plan exodus. The authorization decision will be made by McAuliffe personally. No delegation of authority is granted. The timing of execution will be determined by operational conditions, weather, German activity, and the tactical window for movement. McAuliffe's final guidance to his commanders is direct. Prepare your units for the possibility of breakout, but do not discuss the plan beyond essential personnel. The division's morale remains solid, but morale is sustained partly by the belief that relief is coming. Widespread knowledge that the command is planning for relief failure could undermine. The breakout plan will remain a staff-level contingency unless and until execution is ordered. December 25th and 26th, while the division awaits relief that may or may not arrive, preparations for contingency operations continue. These preparations are not dramatic or visible. They consist of staff work, equipment staging, and quiet conversations between commanders and their subordinates. But they represent the reality of the 101st Airborne is preparing to survive whether relief arrives or not. On December 25th, ammunition is redistributed to prioritize units designated for breakout operation. Artillery ammunition is conserved by reducing fire mission to essential defensive support only. Infantry units conduct inventories and consolidate ammunition stocks so that breakout force units have maximum available supplies, while units remaining in Bastogne retain enough for final defensive operation. The redistribution is noticed by soldiers, but not explained. Officers, when asked, provide vague answers about maximizing combat effectiveness. Medical preparations continue. Wounded are reassessed daily. Those classified as ambulatory are quietly informed that they may be required to move with minimal notice. No details are provided, but the implication is clear enough that some wounded begin preparing mentally for whatever is coming. Medical staff organize supplies into two categories: materials that will be carried if the division moves, and materials that will be left behind. The latter category includes most surgical equipment, which cannot be carried during a breakout, but might be useful to medical personnel who remain. Supply caches are established at the southern edge of Bastogne's perimeter. These caches contain ammunition, rations, and medical supplies positioned for rapid access by units executing a breakout. The positioning is explained as defensive preparation, which is partially, but the staff officers who select cache locations are thinking about breakout routes, not defensive positions. The caches are placed where breakout units can access them during initial movement. On December 26th, junior officers in units designated for breakout operations receive fragmentary orders outlining assembly areas and movement procedures. The orders do not explain the purpose, but experienced officers understand their meaning. Assembly areas at the perimeter, night movement procedures, light equipment loads. These are breakout indicators. Some officers brief their platoon leaders. Most do not. The information is kept tight because the decision to execute has not been made and may never be made if Third Army arrives. McAuliffe spends December 26th reviewing intelligence reports and consulting with staff officers. Third Army is reported to be within 10 miles of Bastogne and engaged with German forces. Weather has cleared enough to permit some air resupply. Ammunition is delivered by parachute drop. Not enough to fully replenish stocks, but enough to extend the timeline by perhaps 48 hours. The situation remains critical, but has not yet reached the trigger point for planned exodus. As December 26 ends, the 101st Airborne remains indefensive. Positions around Bastogne, surrounded by German forces, uncertain when or if relief will arrive. The division has plans for every contingency: continue defending, break out, surrender if no other option exists. Supplies are staged, units are briefed, decision criteria are established. But no decision has been made because the situation, while grave, has not yet reached the point of irreversibility. The historical record shows that Third Army established contact with Bastogne on December 26th, ending the siege. But the record also shows that until contact was actually made, the 101st Airborne operated on the assumption that contact might not occur. The contingency plans were real. The preparations were thorough. The calculations of ammunition, medical capacity, and survivability were precise. The division was ready to implement Plan Exodus if circumstances required it. The fact that circumstances did not require it does not diminish the significance of the preparations. The 101st Airborne at Bastogne is remembered for holding until relieved. What is less remembered is that they were fully prepared for the possibility that relief might fail, and they had made the hard decisions about what to do if it did. They calculated when they would run out of ammunition. They planned which wounded would be left behind. They established the criteria for abandoning their positions. And they waited, ready to execute whatever orders the situation demanded, knowing that survival might depend not on being rescued, but on their own capacity to endure, and if necessary, to leave behind everything and everyone they could not carry.